Hey, what's up, guys? It's me here from my channel, and today we're going to be going over the complete history of Aristotle. So if you want to learn about this legendary philosopher, then stay tuned, because it's going to be a great lesson. And just a quick note before we start, every single day I send out a free newsletter that recaps everything that I am learning in these videos. If you sign up, you can get the entire history of philosophy delivered straight to your inbox for absolutely free. As always, there will be a timestamp in the description so you can jump around if you want to skip ahead, but let's begin. After Plato died in 327 BC, Aristotle left Athens and became the tutor of Alexander the Great, the king of Macedon. He tutored Alexander for around 4 years, but he was eventually fired when Alexander went to war. After Aristotle died, his works were collected and edited by his students, and they continued to teach his philosophy for several centuries. Now I know what some of you are thinking. First, in his book Metaphysics, he argues that if the gods needed anything, someone would have to take care of them. And since they don't need anything, no one has to take care of them. It seems like Aristotle was looking for a middle ground between the religious people of his time and the atheists. He was born in Stagira and tutored Alexander the Great before founding his own school of philosophy called the Lyceum. Aristotle is considered to be the father of scientific thinking because he emphasized empirical observation and reason. He was also a religious thinker who believed in a divine creator, but he rejected the Greek gods. Instead, he held a form of deism. Also, I'm going to explain what each book is about and why they're important. He wanted to believe in something greater than himself, but he didn't want to be controlled by that something. He wanted to be free to think what he wanted and say what he wanted, without fear of divine retribution. He argues that everything in the universe is made up of 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water. He also believes that the universe is eternal, and that there is a prime mover, which is the ultimate cause of motion. He argues that the best kind of government is a mixed constitution, which combines elements of monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. In this book, Aristotle talks about poetry and drama. He argues that the purpose of poetry is to imitate reality. He argues that rhetoric is based on the emotions of the audience, and that there are 3 types of rhetoric: forensic, epideictic, and deliberative, and that the elements of poetry are plot, character, thought, diction, melody, and spectacle. He also talks about the ideal citizen and the relationship between the citizen and the state. He was put to death by the Athenians for his involvement in a political dispute between 2 rival factions in the city. He argues that there are 10 categories: substance, quantity, quality, relation, time, place, position, state, action, and passion. One of the factions was led by the oligarch group known as the 300, and the other faction was led by Demosthenes, a popular leader of the Democratic Party. When the 300 tried to take over Athens, Aristotle sided with Demosthenes and the democracy. But after the democracy was defeated, Aristotle was charged with impiety and was forced to flee Athens. In this book, Aristotle talks about dreams and argues that dreams are caused by the movement of the body. He spent the last years of his life in the Macedonian court, where he died. And finally, if you enjoyed this video and you haven't done so already, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Right. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day. If you want to learn more about him or any of these books, highly recommend checking out William Lane Craig's lectures on Aristotle. This shows us that he didn't believe in the Greek gods. Second, in his book on the soul, he talks about how the human soul is immortal, but the souls of animals are not. Aristotle argues that the ultimate goal in life is happiness, and that happiness is achieved by living a life of virtue. Also argues that there are 2 types of virtues: intellectual virtues and moral virtues. Intellectual virtues are things like wisdom and knowledge, and they are developed through education and experience. Moral virtues, on the other hand, are things like courage and temperance, and they are developed through habit and practice. That implies that he didn't believe in an afterlife. If he believed in the Greek gods, they would have an afterlife in Hades. However, he denied both of these things. You're probably thinking, since Aristotle was a Greek philosopher, he must have been polytheistic and believed in all those Greek gods. But that's not really true. As a matter of fact, while he did believe in some sort of higher power, he did not believe in any of the Greek gods. During the Middle Ages, Aristotle's works were translated into Latin and studied by Christian scholars, and he played a major role in shaping the medieval worldview. During the Renaissance, Aristotle's emphasis on empirical observation and scientific thinking helped to pave the way for the scientific revolution. What we do know is that he did not believe in the Greek gods, and instead opted for a form of deism. Deism is the belief that God created the universe and then left it alone to run on its own. Aristotle believed that the universe was orderly and rational, and he thought that this orderliness was evidence of a divine creator. But he didn't believe in a personal God who intervened in human affairs. And today, he is still one of the most influential philosophers ever. So first off, who was Aristotle? Well, he was a Greek philosopher who lived between 384 BCE to 322 BCE. He was born in the city of Stagira in the Greek kingdom of Macedon, which is now part of northern Greece. His father was a member of the royal Macedonian court, so Aristotle had access to a good education and could afford tutors. When he was around 14 years old, he began studying at the academy in Athens under the famous philosopher Plato, where he spent 20 years learning about metaphysics, ethics, politics, and other philosophical topics. After being fired, Aristotle went back to Athens, where he established his own school of philosophy called the Lyceum. The Lyceum was different than the academy in the sense that Aristotle focused less on pure abstract thought and more on empirical observation. Aristotle argued that our senses also play an important role in acquiring knowledge. In other words, while Plato believed that true knowledge could only be attained through reason and intuition, this is why he is often called the father of scientific thinking. Some of Aristotle's most famous students were Calenus, Theophrastus, and Eudemus. Okay, so now let's talk about Aristotle's thoughts on spirituality. There are two proofs that show how Aristotle was not a believer in the Greek gods. It seems like Aristotle was searching for a deeper truth behind the myths and rituals of his time, but he wasn't quite sure what that truth was. In fact, in his book Politics, he says that the best kind of government is one that is run by people who fear God, but not by people who are trying to please God. So to recap, Aristotle was a Greek philosopher who lived in the 4th century BC. Now let's move on to the next section of the video where we'll discuss how Aristotle died. So we don't know exactly how Aristotle died, but we do know that he died in Athens around 322 BC. Alright, now let's go through all of Aristotle's books and summarize each of them. In this book, Aristotle talks about the best kind of government. In this book, Aristotle explores the nature of reality. So his first book is called the Nicomachean Ethics. Now this book is about ethics and virtue. The second book is called the Politics. Book No. 3 is called the Metaphysics. Book No. 4 is called the Poetics. Book No. 5 is called the Rhetoric. Here Aristotle talks about rhetoric, which is the art of persuasion. Book No. 6 is called the Magna Moralia. This book is a collection of Aristotle's essays on various topics such as friendship, anger, and ambition. Book number 7 is called the Constitution of Athens. In this book, Aristotle gives an account of the political institutions of ancient Athens. Book No. 8 is called the Categories. In this book, Aristotle discusses the different ways that we categorize things. The 9th book is called the Interpretation of Dreams. And that's it. Those are all of Aristotle's major books. And if you want to learn about the history of philosophy from the beginning until today, check out my course Philosophy 101.